Welcome to Ernie's Corner. I'm Joyce Conroy, and I am going to be posting this on my Facebook page, The Block Party, because tonight we are talking about a project that Ernie and Pacific Ioneer were involved in, Save the Children. And on the screen, I am looking at some of the names that we've admired for so long, especially in the area of R&B and soul music, like Gladys Knight and the Pips. And also, Bill Withers, Lean on Me, Use Me, and of course the Jackson Five, Sammy Davis Jr., Jerry Butler, the Iceman, and all these great names. They came together for this Save the Children project that Ernie Cefalu is going to be talking about. Now, I'm wondering if Ernie Cefalu is going to levitate himself.
Oh, here I come, Joyce. Get
Oh
ready.
boy.
Hi, neighbors. What's up? Here I come. There I
Smooth
am.
landing. Oh, that was a good smooth landing this time,
Just
Ernie.
dropped right in. How are you? Hey, everybody. How you doing, Joyce?
I am doing just fine. Thank you so much. I'm in all of those names that are on the screen, and that Pacific Ioneer was involved in this wonderful project.
Yeah, for me, it was really, again, to talk about this really we have to back up even to
Mhm.
last week's show where we talked about the flaming embers and working for Invictus and the honeycomb and, the Fifth Dimension's greatest hits. All that happened before this. And it happened because of a girl named Sandra Forney. She worked at Motown and she was our contact person on the West Coast with Motown. I was sent back east to Detroit to shoot those bands that we talked about. And she was our point person. So we got to know her, we got to deal with her, and we got along with her really well. And so when it came time for this project to come up, she was actually a personal secretary as well as, working with the creative end of it. She was Abner, the guy who was running Motown West. She was his right-hand gal. And she suggested that because by this time now, Reverend Jesse Jackson had gone to Berry Gordy at Motown. And because it was Detroit and because they're in Detroit, and, the whole idea was to really sort of raise money for inner city children to be able to experience summer camps and daycare things and all that stuff. And it was called Operation Push. And he went to Berry Gordy. Berry Gordy was a big supporter of his and good friend, and committed his top people at Motown, his top acts, to be involved in this Save the Children concert. And Sandra recommended us to him. He was familiar with the stuff that we had done for Invictus and for us Hot Wax and some of the other with those other bands, and he was really cool about having us do it. And so we had a meeting with him in Los Angeles, and he sort of told us about what it was going to be, and how these giants in the soul music world were going to all be appearing in the same place. And it was really kind of crazy because one of the names that resonated with me really heavily was Quincy Jones.
Yes.
I had done an album a few years earlier called Smackwater Jack, which we had talked about in one of your shows on Quincy Jones, our shows. And so I would, really like to be part of this along with all these other stars. I mean, I was a big soul music person from the 50s, loving that, black entertainers singing awesome songs and blues. And it was just a whole world that opened up to me as a white kid, to get into all this music. And so now, like you said, these names that are going to be here are just incredible. So in that meeting, Abner asked if I would like to go to the concert. So I had, well, let me think about it. Okay. And so they sent me to the concert, and I'm not a photographer, but I brought my camera with me, and I was backstage. I was also out in front in the front row of these acts happening, and I was able to I shot probably, and you'll see some of them, I shot probably, I don't know, 2 rolls of film of photography that's never been seen.
Whoa.
This photography that I'm going to show you, that I'm going to share with you, has never really been seen, and it's going to be another frame after this. There's a couple things here. I think this is Don Cornelius there talking about. He was kind of like the MC, and that Soul Train was a huge, thing, and started him on that track of Soul Train. And because I think this all came before Soul Train, actually, or maybe it was around the same time. I'm not sure, but he was a celebrity, and he sort of emceed this concert with all these amazing stars. And you'll see there's a roster, a poster that we did that I'm sending you all these images so you can post them bigger. But it's right there. It's a poster of some of the acts. And what we see over here is the front cover that we did. But I was able to go there and really experience it. I was sent to get the vibe of what it was, but I ended up getting the vibe, and I got a bunch of great photography. So,
That is great.
yeah. And so, like I said, the idea of Save the Children, it was a very emotional thing for me. I mean, how do I touch other people? How do I create something that will make people want to respond to this and donate money and go to the concert? And so and the need of these children. And so what we did was I created this idea of like a window with rain coming down, and like when we were kids, if it was raining, we would do it. We'd also blow our breath on the glass, and you could write things and stuff. So I came up with this idea of featuring all the names on the front cover again, and you'll see that better when I send you the other images. But it's all the names of the groups, and in finger lettering at the top, I did Save the Children. The image that you see there is Drew Struzan's son, Christian, and then it's Abner's nephew. And the Asian girl was a girl that worked at Motown, and that's her daughter. So we were able to use those children in a window. I mean, just with the look on their face, and they're so, it just touches people. It touches people. The best way I could think about touching them, again, with this wet window and just the cloudiness, the gray, it just sort of set a path of, reaching out. It's like, watching, Shriners commercials or St. Jude's. I mean, it just really touches you. How do I touch somebody like that same way to make them open up their pocketbook and get involved?
And you did. The innocence it was
yes,
captured in that.
That was the big thing. When you look at these kids closer, you'll see, I mean, you just you love them. You just fall in love with them. You want to help them, and it just worked out. It worked out really, really well. Sandra and Abner were really big advocates of what we were doing. And I want to see, okay, so this over here is the roster of the acts that were appearing. And again, I'll send you those. I just want to get to this frame here. Let's see. Okay, hold on. There it is, that sneaky little thing. Okay.
I thought I saw something with you and Alice Cooper that flew by.
Yeah, no, that was something else, But,
so I don't miss much.
Yeah. So what we have here is, some of the acts that you see, the Jackson Five. I mean, these photographs have never been seen before. And then you see some pictures of the kids a little bit bigger. And then over here, you've got Quincy. He was backstage, and I had both black and white and color film. So unfortunately, I got black and white on him, but we got a chance to talk. Because I was backstage, I didn't get to sit or talk with each one of them, but the ones that were available, I certainly, made an effort to just say hi and how much I love their music. As a fan, I mean, it was like a fan rather than a business thing for me. I mean, I was backstage, my mouth was wide open. I must have looked like a baboon, or something. But it was just crazy. I couldn't believe that all these incredible musicians were, and I had met Cannonball Adderley years earlier. Wow. When I did the concert on Staten Island. for the Jazz on Grass. So he was there, Cannonball Adderley was there. And then years later, I did an album for his brother Nat. So it's like all these things that are interconnected, that were people that were in more than one situation, and it really put me in a great place. And like I said, a lot of the photography that I was able to take of these acts it was just astonishing. And again, this is just a few of there's probably, I don't know, close to 100 shots that I did. And I just sort of put them away. I took the film, I never even really developed it because, they had they didn't have really photography for me to work with. I had to do the shots of the kids and came up with that whole idea. That wasn't something they would shoot at the concert. So, they had photographers there and cinematographers that were videoing and they're filming everything and taking back, shots. And I just did it for reference, I wasn't planning on, well, I'm going to have these shots in 40 years, 50 years from now, they're going to be pretty desirable. I didn't look at it that way. For me, it was like shooting scrap, for what we would be doing. So, it was very interesting, like I said, to be able to meet these acts. And like I had some of them that I had done work for already, others that I would end up doing work for later. I mean, Quincy Jones, we talked just briefly about Smackwater Jack. You really liked the album. And then, years later, I meet with him again when he needed a logo for himself. And we talked about that. And
Yes.
he was a part of a production called $600 and a Mule, which was a stage play that he was involved in. And I did the logo for that for him, so it was kind of weird how these things kept. And Sandra Forney, who brought us into this whole thing in the beginning, she left Motown and went over to Paramount and went to work for a girl named Hollis Brown, who was a senior vice president, and her job was to take all their catalog and put it on home video. And Hollis was not familiar with people that were like me. So Sandra right away said, hey, there's this guy and he's done all these album covers. And Hollis was a music fan. And so, again, Sandra got us in there, got to meet Hollis. And for the next 2 or 3 years, we did all the packaging for Paramount Home Video. We did the boxes, we did all the stuff for them because of Sandra, and it's really funny because we had talked about why we started Pacific Ioneer. Part of why we started Pacific Ioneer was we didn't agree with the way clients were treated by the company we were working for. They were milked until they had nothing left, and then they were tossed to one side. And that's just not how you build relationships. That's not how you build friends, or anything. That's not how you go through life because it's a short path. You end up running out of people to do that to, and then you got this reputation that precedes you. So we always try to not only do great work, but become friends with the people we work for. And to this day, Shep Gordon and Alice Cooper, for example, there aren't a whole lot of them, but the ones that are still alive, we're still friends, and, whether they're in the industry or not still, we're still friends and we communicate. And that's all part of, building something substantial, something that will last. And I had said this before, Pacific Ioneer was something that was very special. It had special people in it. We were out to do something very special, something different. And, it was kind of what we thought it should be, and it could have very easily failed. Just like other companies, they have good intentions and they go the wrong way, or they don't end up, they can't run it right. I was very blessed because my main partner, Tony, we had a third partner that he only lasted a few months because he couldn't make the transition between ownership and working for somebody. And so it just didn't work out. And so Tony and I went on, and I was very lucky. He was very smart, very, very smart with business. And, even though his main connections were in New York, we were able to build a great friendship and following in California. So it was very special and something that needed to be protected and something we cherished. And to this day, I still realize all of that, and Pacific Ioneer is still a company that I do that, between Bob Inglesiepen and myself and a couple other people, we do everything that, a 6 or 8, 10 person agency could do. So it's kind of interesting how all that started in the music business, started with people that kept on music. So I don't know what happened to Sandra. We sort of lost touch after Paramount. Paramount lasted about 3 or 4 years. I was also doing all their backlot stuff. So that was kind of interesting and gives us something to really, to carry on. I mean, because we were already doing the home video stuff, we got introduced to the backlot, all the different facilities, costumes, food service, all the different functions and facilities that Paramount offered people to do stuff on their lot. And we created, it was called Art Craft, and we created all of that stuff. New York Street, when they built New York Street there, we did that. And all of that really kind of, because of Sandra, it's just so funny how, and you know what? And I'm sure I haven't heard the last from her. I'm sure that at some point she'll pop up again,
The boomerang that we talked about.
That's right.
Spiritual boomerang.
It keeps, because friendships, I mean, how many times have we had a really good friend and you sort of lose each other for a while, and it could be, and in the case of Bert and I, we've gone like maybe 8 years without talking, and all of a sudden you're back talking again, and it's like you never left. You didn't miss a beat. And that's really, I think, a lot of the difference between good friends and real good friends and great friends. And, I mean, and it's, and it's important to realize who's who, and this is one of the other shots. This is a great shot.
Oh, that's neat.
And Reverend Jesse Jackson. I mean, and I've got, I don't know, 3 or 4 shots of them individually and together like this. But this to me really represented what the whole concert was about. And the fact that the window is now empty. That was on the back cover with a lot of credits and stuff. I mean, there was a lot of information that had to go into this album. So it was a gatefold album that had, mainly the inside had the kids running along the bottom in a strip and all this type, just tons of type, because there was so many different artists, so many things that needed to be said, so many legal things. I mean, it was really kind of crazy, but it all worked out really, really well. And like I said, they were very happy. Abner was happy. Sandra was happy. We were happy, and I was really pleased because I got to go to Detroit and experience it front row and then backstage.
So lucky, Ernie. Now, when I'm looking at this shot of the empty window and there's Reverend Jackson and Isaac Hayes, at the empty window, the children grew up, and the children are Reverend Jackson and Isaac Hayes. They both had dreams like many children and went on to live their dreams.
Yeah, and
that is really poignant.
It is. And on the back cover, like I said, the front cover, you have all those names and you have the kids in the window. But even though there's all those names, they're kind of muted in a way that the first thing you see is that Save the Children finger lettering at the top where the water has been running down because you go through it. And then these kids, and very compelling,
Yes, it is.
compelling. And then on the back cover to see that, more text, but the empty window. And yes, I mean, it kind of moves on. It does, and it's funny you should talk that way because that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Like the kids have gone on and it's a better world. It's things are better. They don't have to be alone. There's unity, between these two guys, the Reverend Jesse Jackson and Isaac Hayes, both strong symbols of what they do and what they stand for. I mean, and that's why that shot, there were a couple of comps that I put together for this album. And one of them was using this shot because I thought it really conveyed the whole thing. You've got religion and you've got music, and they're so intertwined. When you think about soul music, whether you're black or white or green or yellow, it all hits us the same way. I mean, it's that touching your heart, feeling the pain of others, feeling others and what they are experiencing. And this shot to me really, it summed it all up. And the way I had designed this was the front cover was Jesse Jackson with just like half this shot. And then the back cover, when you turned it over, was Isaac Hayes. And you see they're doing, because it was a gatefold album. And then it had kids on the inside. But it took up too much room, to do something really big like that. Then I tried to sell it as a poster, but They ended up buying the one with all the faces because it was more than just these two. I was seeing it in a different way than they were seeing it. I was seeing it the way I described it. They were seeing it like we got to sell music, we got to sell albums, and the best way to sell these albums is to have all these acts premiered.
Yeah.
You know, just, and that was one of the challenges. I mean, I didn't want to do a front cover that had all these people on it. It ended up looking like, let me go back to that. I'll end up going back to that. Let's see here, where it,
Isaac was just a big part of the Stax record legacy. I mean,
yeah,
I loved the way he did "Walk On By." The
yes,
way he did "Walk On By," and I think the LP was "Hot Buttered Soul," and it was just, I mean, the way that he put that together. I mean, to take a Burt Bacharach song
yeah,
and make
yeah,
something
something
just.
totally out
I
of
know,
reality.
I
Yeah,
know. There it is. There's the covers.
yeah, yeah. It's funny, but I also liked him in South Park. He was great as Chef. I don't know whether you were a South Park fan, but
A little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, I really got into it. I mean, but then it got a little bit crazy. But I always really liked the two guys that started it. They were really different. They were unique. It reminded me a lot. Like I think they went to some awards thing and they were dressed like girls, or one of them was dressed like a girl. He had a beard, and then I thought immediately of what Tony and I and Bonnie did at the Grammys, where we went with the big diver helmets with the big eyeball and the ears. Have you seen that?
I'm trying to recall that, but
Yeah,
in
we
my
went to the
mind's eye.
yeah we went to the Grammys the second year we were nominated. We made these. They look like diver helmets, and they had ears. It was a big eyeball, and there was a hole that we could look out of because we were inside. We had tuxedos on, white gloves, and these big eyeballs with hair and ears. And we wore them through the whole awards thing. It was great, and we got all kinds of coverage. We got a brochure that we walked in with Roberta Flack. We were on either side of Roberta Flack walking into the thing. I mean, it wasn't televised in those days. This was like 1973.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been. It was still at the Palladium. It was a small event. I mean, it was mainly not what it became. It became a huge like Academy Award thing now. But back then it was just, it wasn't a big thing, but to be nominated, for three of them was really gratifying for me. And the fact that the work that we were doing was really, something that was recognized, and
Such
this
an honor.
album, starting with the Flaming Embers and Greatest Hits. I mean, most people would get a Greatest Hits album and go, "Oh well, it's a Greatest Hits. Nobody really cares. It's all repackaged. Everybody knows that the record company is just trying to milk it." And I've already got albums with those songs on it. I mean, but for me, again, Marilyn McCoo, the group was amazing, and they were really groundbreaking and different. And when I got the assignment, I didn't think about it that way. I thought about it, well, like, wow, this is going to be amazing. And then I saw what we had to work with, and it got more and more difficult. But this one was fairly easy, like I said, because the composition, the concept of what we did, with this front cover and the back cover and the window and the kids, really sort of achieved that emotional connection that I'm always trying to generate when I do stuff, whether it's a corporate piece or it's a music piece or whatever. I try to touch people. I mean, that's really what it's all about. I
Yeah.
mean, when I take off my art hat and I put on my marketing hat, I mean, you're selling a product and you're selling it to people that may need it. A lot of times we sell stuff to people that they don't need. That's depending on how clever you position it. I've bought, I mean, it's like buying an album with one hit on it. You buy it for the hit. There are a lot of people out there that you sell stuff to that don't really need it, but you get clever on how you promote it and clever at what you say about it. And people will go for it. I mean, it's really weird. I try to stay away from that because I'm a firm believer in, people coming back. I don't want to have an experience with somebody and they go, "Oh man, I'm never going to go back there again." It's like going to a restaurant, getting a crappy meal. Never going to go back there. I mean, unless I, care if I get a little bit sick because it's a bargain. I know what to expect. So, but, we built Pacific Pioneer on those basic fundamentals, of trying to be really, really professional at what we did. And it was really something because we didn't have a lot of experience in it. I mean, really, I had done a lot of corporate work before I started doing album covers. And even when I started doing album covers, it wasn't like it became. I was doing album covers, maybe one or two a month, maybe one a month, doing a lot of the merchandising, like the Rolling Stones thing with the tongue. But when it really started happening, we learned. I mean, we really, I've said it before, we never really had a roadmap on how to do it. We just sort of learned as we went along. And luckily, people came that we needed. I don't know how else to explain it except that because we were doing it the way we wanted to do it, which we felt was the right way and the honest way to do it, it attracted a lot of talent. And the fact that we were doing album covers. Everybody wanted to do album covers because it was crazy. For artists, it was like the best thing ever to do an album cover because you could do whatever you want. The crazier you were, the more the groups loved it. You didn't have marketing people sitting around the table going, well, I don't know, JR, we better mother hen this for a while. I'm a little bit skeptic. I'm concerned. That was the big thing in corporate. We're concerned. Oh, great. Now here we go. We got a committee of people. It was such a crazy thing working for big corporations.
I can only imagine.
It was, yeah. I remember sitting in on a meeting at Nestle where we were talking about a product that was going to be marketed to Hispanics. It was a product that they had bought, a smaller company that was very successful, and they bought it and they wanted to fold it into their portfolio of foods. I mean, Nestle is the largest food company in the world. When you go into a major grocery store, they own about 3,000 things in there, SKUs. And I remember we're sitting in this meeting, there was like 6 or 7 of us, and we're trying to come up with how we're going to promote this thing. And I all of a sudden said, first of all, there's none of us in the age group that we're talking about, and there's none of us that are Hispanic. How do we, let's get some people in here that know what they're talking about. I mean, corporate America was very much like that, and the levels of acceptance, of approval was so much greater than rock and roll and music. I mean, this, usually on an album cover, you deal with the manager or you deal with the group. We never really had to deal with the record company except for the times that we did work on assignments that we were given from the record company. But like I said before, 95% of the work that we did was for the bands. And, we had relationships with them, and we never played that card. We never said, well, we're your friend, so you should buy what we're going to sell you. I mean, because sometimes friends can do that. They can, well, I'm your friend and you need to do this. You need to help me out, or you need to overlook the little things that you're looking at and trust me because I'm your friend. That didn't fly. And we never really did that. I mean, it's really kind of funny because we had opportunities. There was an opportunity when Shelter Records was Leon Russell's label.
Yes, I was just going to say Leon
with the
Russell.
the rooster with the upside down Superman logo on it for their logo. I mean, it's great. Well, we did an album for a group called Good Thunder, and they only had one album, but those members went on to do other stuff, and we'll talk about that.
Oh, that's another show. That's going to be
Thunder,
great.
Yeah, Good Thunder. They were really good, and a bunch of them became great even later. But we had done this album for them. They sent us to Hawaii with the band Good Thunder because they were opening for Leon Russell at this concert in Hawaii. So we got a chance to do a 3-day thing there and be with this group. But after we did that, we got a call from the guy that was running the label, and he wanted to come over and talk to us. And he came over and he was really liked all our work and stuff. And he had this list of releases that they were going to be doing over the next few months. And he wanted to give us all this work. The only downside of it was that we needed to give him a kickback on everything that we did for him. Yeah. Okay. And my partner, Tony, and I just looked at each other, and Tony said, look, we appreciate the offer. We're glad that you like our work. But, that's not how we do stuff. We don't work like that. And, and then I remember me saying, if I have to pay somebody to use me for what I do, I really can't be that person. That's not what I'm about. I mean, you come to me because of the value I can bring to you, not the value you bring to me. And it makes a big difference. And this guy was really He could have done it. We could have had all this work. And they had Shelter had a lot of releases, and they had, they weren't all big hits, but they had a lot of work, and we just couldn't do it.
You did it with integrity. God bless you, Ernie. Our remaining time, you know what my question is going to be, and I'm sure it's going to be difficult with this particular project. What songs would you like to? I'm going to your choice.
Well, it's like what we talked about with the Fifth Dimension. Every song is a winner. Okay, every song, and God, I love every one of those artists. There isn't one artist on there, that I don't respect and love their music. But for me, there's one that stands out above all the others, and it's Burton would say, you're
becomes a low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit, right? Low-hanging fruit. But for me, there's nothing better than Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On."
That's fabulous choice, because Marvin was very brave, very courageous to look at social issues.
Yeah.
And want to go ahead and record and write from his heart and soul. It wasn't about a formula.
Yeah, such a tragic ending too, with his father and all that stuff. But man, he was just so incredible. Always incredible. And yeah, pushing the boundaries, really relating to what was going on in the world. I mean, he was really had his finger on the pulse. It's so funny because musicians and artists who have their finger on the pulse, sometimes they don't live as long as they should. It's like the candle burning that burns twice as bright burns half as long. Yeah. I was on Facebook the other day, on the internet, and on Facebook they have those reels, and they have these little short clips of different things. And there was a few, but one on George Carlin, and he was talking about how all the rich people own everything, and they've always owned everything, and they're always going to continue to own everything. And they give us the feeling of, and this is probably 15 years ago, he's talking about this, about how they own everything, and they just give us the illusion of we have a choice and we have things to do, but they control everything. And he was so brilliant because George, and we've talked about him, George was a very good friend. Him and I and Kenny Rankin were like the three musketeers at Little David. And George used to come over to the house. He'd come over 2 o'clock in the morning. We'd be partying, and in our pajamas and stuff, and he'd be there. And sometimes Kenny would come, and and he would go through his routines, and it was like getting your own personal concert right there. It was like Save the Children. I got my own personal concert, like Black Sabbath. I got my own personal concert, and it was, and George was so in touch. He was our Lenny Bruce. My generation, your generation, you're younger than I am, but still you understood who George was and what he was about. And, for some reason, certain people don't like people that are talking the truth, because other people start to listen and they start going, you know what, that guy makes a good point, man. I never thought about it that way. And George was amazing. George was a master at the English language. He was a master at everything. The guy was crazy. He would crack his knuckles, 37 times, and all the names for him, and just the crazy stuff that he did and knew. And I've had many experiences like this, and I'm so blessed for it. Save the Children was definitely one that was unlike anything else. I would put it right up there with Jesus Christ Superstar.